Hey, what's up everyone? It's Jose, king of the misplays. First time on building EDH deck tech. I brought my Zada Hedron Grinder, which is a 3 and a red legendary creature goblin ally. So whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, copy that spell for each other creature you control. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So that's the commander. I'm gonna go through the creatures first. I have Burgi, God of Storytelling. So just whenever you cast a spell, it gives me another mana, keeps me going. And then the boast part doesn't really matter. Then I have Runaway Steamkin. It gives me more mana to cast more spells, and it just gets bigger if I wanted to, but that part doesn't really either matter. Take the counters off, you get 3 spells, more gas. Kiln Artist, it gets a +1/+1 for every artifact you control, and I get a lot of treasures in this deck sometimes, so it gets pretty big. And then it has Magecraft, of course, so that works. You cast, you copy, you get more treasure tokens. Treasonous Ogre, one of my favorite. Pay life, it's only a resource, and it just helps you not run out of gas. Young Pyromancer gives you 1/1 red elemental every time you cast. So like I said, just bodies on bodies. Handwear Garrison, more bodies. And then Loyal Apprentice. This one's a little worse because you have to have the commander out to get the body, but still works. That's a tongue twister. Whenever Krenko 10 Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. So that one's really good when you get it out. More bodies, bigger creatures. And Krenko Mob Boss, tap it, you get goblins. Everyone knows it, everyone loves it. And then the last one is Mog War Marshal, just has Echo. You get a body when it dies, you get a body when it enters. This part of my creatures right here are the mana dorks. So we have Iron Mirror, we have Mannequin, Ornithopter of Paradise, Plague Mirror. Plague Mirror is a special one for me because I love killing people with Infect. So it's Infect and a mana dork. So if you buff this up with 9 points of damage, it's Infect, they're dead. It's one of my favorite mana dorks. And then Simian Spear Guide, it's not a mana dork technically, but it is, so I put it there. Dreadhorde Arcanist. This one's cool. When you attack, you may cast target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost less than or equal to Dreadhorde Arcanist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. And then you exile it. This one works really well with Zada because I buff my creatures pretty high, so almost any spell becomes a free spell when I attack with it. And then everybody knows Dockside Extortionist, why it's good. It's just treasure tokens. I'm going to go over the instants and sorceries in the deck. First, I'm going to start with the card draw. So when you target Zada with this, if you have a bunch of tokens out, you just draw cards like crazy. So Crimson Wisp, just target creature becomes red, gains haste, which also helps because then all my creatures get haste, but you draw a card most importantly. We have Stun. Again, a lot of the first parts of these cards don't really matter most of the time, but target creature cannot block this turn, and then you draw a card. I'm not trying to block, I'm trying to swing. Expedite, again, this one helps. One of my favorites, gives them all haste, and you draw a bunch of cards when you're copying it and targeting your tokens. Ancestral Anger, just draw a card. It's good. And then these ones aren't more so for targeting, but Tormenting Voice, just discard, draw 2 cards to try to find some more spells. Thrill of Possibility, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Fist of Flames is a really good one. Draw a card until the end of the turn. Target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn. So you target Zada, and then each time you copy it and you target another token, it's going to get bigger because you're going to have drawn another card. So this one's a beater right here. Boiling Blood. Target creature attacks this turn if able, draw a card. Accelerate. Target creature gains haste. Always a big important part in the deck. You want to give your tokens haste and draw a bunch of cards. Wild Guess, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Faithless Looting, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. These are the instants and sorceries that buff all the tokens you're creating, so you can just beat face. We have Run Amok, +3/+3, and gains trample. Trample's important. Reckless Charge, gives them haste and +3/+0, and it has flashback, so you can cast it again once it hits the graveyard value. Sudden Breakthrough, one of my favorites. It's only 2 mana. You give them +2. They get first strike, and you create a treasure token. So you copy it. It's like 6 creatures. You get 6 treasure tokens to keep it going. Maximum Velocity. It's how I live my life. Also, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains haste. Invigorated Rampage. This one's fun because we're only going to use one of them. The target one creature gets +4 and trample. Beat face. Brute force, just simple +3/+3. Brute strength, +3/+1, and trample again. Trample is key. You want to be able to get over the blockers. Rush of adrenaline, +2/+1, and trample. Titan strength. Titan strength +3 and +1. And then if you copy this a bunch of times, you're going to be scrying a bunch of times, which is always good. Stolen vitality. Target creature gets +3/+1. If it's your turn, they gain trample. If it's not, first strike, but trample is key. Samlet sprint, again with the scrying, I think it's really important because you can just dig for that one answer you need, and you get +2/+1 and haste. So this one's definitely an MVP. Kicking the door is a great card in this deck because not only do you get the +1/+1 and they gain haste, but you also get to go through the dungeon. And if you get to go through a dungeon like 10 times, you probably finish the dungeon, and that's just really good value. Barge in gets +2/+2, and if it's not a human, we're getting trample. None of the creatures in this deck are human. Some of the tokens are, but it doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of your creatures are going to get trample. This part of the instants and sorceries are the rituals. So we draw a lot of cards in this deck, so Inner Fire is a fire card. Because sometimes you have like 30, 40 cards in your hand, and you're getting all that mana to play those fire cards. Add red to your mana pool for each goblin. You get a lot of goblins in here. Makes sense. Mana Geyser, one of my favorites. Cast it, and you get a red for all the tapped opponent lands. Battle Hymn, again, we're going to be playing a lot of creatures, getting a lot of tokens, so Battle Hymn is really good. You get a red for each creature you control. Seething Song, just to keep going. So these are the token generator spells in the deck. We have Krenko's Command. We have Forbidden Friendship. Don't tell anybody. 1/1 red dinosaur and a 1/1 white human. Dragon Fodder. Hordling Outburst. And then we just have some red staples that are fun. We have Wheel of Fortune, discard, draw a new hand. We have Deflecting Swat. Jessica's Will. And Mythic Mastery is really important in this deck. So say you're end game, you casted all your spells. You cast this for its overloaded cost. And you get to cast a lot of spells from your graveyard. It's really good. Underworld Breach is the only enchantment I have in the deck. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. So you can just exile a bunch of stuff you don't need and cast a bunch of new cards. Then you exile it at the beginning of the end step. And you just you sacrifice it, right?
Sacrifice.
Yeah. At the beginning of the end step, we sacrifice it. I don't pay attention to any of this.
Oh, jeez.
That was good though, right? That one's fine. All right. These are the artifacts I have in the deck. Ruby Medallion. Want to get our spells as cheap as possible. Conqueror's Flail. It's an artifact. Really cool. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents. We don't really care about that part. We like the part that says, as long as Conqueror's Flail is attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Red doesn't have that much interaction. I don't run that much interaction, so that really comes in handy. Then we have just our mana rocks. We have Mana Vault. Thought Vessel, because we draw a lot of cards and we don't want to discard them. Soul Ring. Mana Crypt. Jeweled Lotus. Chromox. And these are the lands. We have Kerr Keep. It's a legendary land. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay a red and a colorless, and you put a 0/1 red kobold creature token. And just more bodies make Zada more value. Ink Moth Nexus is the next land. You can tap it for a generic, or you could pay generic. Ink Moth Nexus becomes a 1/1 Blink Moth artifact creature with flying and infect. Again, I buff my creatures pretty big, pretty hard in here. So infect kills people with my deck. Darwin Mine just gives you a 1/1 red dwarf creature token. And then Nykthos, Shrine of Nyx. You just get that extra mana to cast those spells. So Beseiju, who shelters all, I get to tap it, pay 2 life, and then I get to make sure that the spell I want to cast, like it might be a Mythic Mastery or something big, doesn't get countered. Just helps with the lack of interaction I have for playing mono red. Valakut Awakening, it's a MDFC card. The other side is a land that enters tapped, and this is the one that helps me get rid of bad hands. If I wanted to, put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library and then draw them any +1. So it just helps me refill with good cards. Cavern of Souls, I can tap it for 1. When it enters, I'm going to choose Goblin most of the time so that my Goblin Commander doesn't get countered. The next land is Sandstone Needle. It's going to enter tapped with 2 depletion counters on it, but when you remove a depletion counter, you get to add 2 red mana. So it's ramp. And the last land that isn't basic is Reliquary Tower. I don't want to discard my cards. And then I have 23 mountains in the deck.
Special thanks to Jose for showing us his take on Zada, Hedron Grinder. If you like this deck or any of the others on the channel, you can go to moxfield.com and see them all laid out for you. The link is in the description below. Consider subscribing and follow everything EDH on all platforms you see on screen. Thanks again for watching, my fellow wizards, and as always, stay foil.
Alright.